For these 6 workers, their job wasn't just a paycheck. It was their purpose and their contribution to their community. But in the middle of their shift, with colleagues and families depending on them, something went horribly wrong. These are the stories of workers who died doing their jobs, right in front of the people who trusted them to come home safe. It was March 12, 2014, and fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the sprawling automotive parts manufacturing plant in Detroit, Michigan. The 200,000-square-foot facility buzzed with rhythmic sounds of heavy machinery as the night shift worked to meet an impossible deadline. The smell of machine oil and hot metal filled the air, mixing with tension that had been building for weeks as management pushed for record production numbers. Carlos Mendoza adjusted his safety glasses one final time as he surveyed the massive hydraulic press that had become his domain over 8 years of dedicated service. At 34, the experienced machine operator had earned respect through his meticulous attention to detail and unwavering commitment to safety protocols. His calloused hands told the story of countless hours spent coaxing maximum efficiency from temperamental machinery, while never compromising on worker protection. The promotion to senior machine operator had come with additional responsibilities that Carlos embraced wholeheartedly. He spent his breaks training new employees on proper safety procedures, emphasizing the importance of following protocols even when supervisors pressured them to take shortcuts. His wife Maria often joked that he cared more about his co-workers' safety than his own, a trait that made him beloved among factory workers. Recent months had brought increasing pressure from the front office as the plant struggled to fulfill a massive contract with a major automotive manufacturer. Safety inspectors had documented several minor violations during routine visits, but necessary repairs had been consistently delayed due to budget constraints and relentless focus on meeting deadlines. Carlos had grown increasingly concerned about shortcuts being encouraged by supervisors desperate to avoid production delays. The night shift on March 12th began like countless others, with Carlos methodically checking his equipment and reviewing safety protocols with his team. The massive hydraulic press, capable of generating 2,000 tons of crushing force, had been experiencing intermittent jamming issues that required frequent clearing. Company policy mandated complete shutdown before any maintenance work, but supervisors had been quietly encouraging workers to clear minor jams while machines remained operational. As the shift progressed, the familiar sound of the hydraulic press suddenly changed, indicating another jam in the feeding mechanism. Carlos approached the machine with practiced efficiency, his 8 years of experience allowing him to quickly diagnose the problem. The jam appeared minor, the type that could be cleared in seconds if he could just reach the stuck material without initiating the full shutdown sequence. Carlos glanced around the factory floor, noting the supervisor's expectant gaze and pressure to maintain production targets. Against his better judgment and years of safety training, he decided to attempt clearing the jam while the machine continued its cycle. He reached toward the feeding mechanism, his loose sleeve catching on a protruding bolt as he stretched to dislodge the stuck material. In an instant, the fabric pulled tight and drew his arm into the machinery's relentless grip. Carlos's scream of terror echoed across the factory floor as co-workers watched in horror, their shouts mixing with mechanical sounds of the press continuing its programmed cycle. Several workers frantically hit emergency stops, but the massive machine's momentum carried it through several more crushing cycles before finally grinding to a halt. Carlos was pronounced dead at Detroit General Hospital at 2:47 a.m., leaving behind a wife and 2 young children. The factory was immediately shut down by OSHA investigators who uncovered a pattern of safety violations. Carlos's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit that revealed management's systematic prioritization of production over worker safety. It was August 7, 2015, and the Miami sun blazed mercilessly over the construction site where a 30-story luxury condominium complex was slowly taking shape against the azure sky. The sound of heavy machinery mixed with workers' voices as the day shift pushed to make up for weeks of weather delays that had put the project dangerously behind schedule. Concrete dust hung in the humid air, and the smell of fresh cement mixed with the salt breeze from nearby Biscayne Bay. Michael O'Brien wiped sweat from his forehead as he surveyed the 15th floor from his position near the freshly poured concrete section. At 41, the experienced construction foreman had spent over 2 decades building Miami's skyline, earning a reputation for uncompromising attention to safety and quality workmanship. His weathered hands and sun-damaged skin told the story of countless hours spent ensuring that every beam, every pour, and every connection met the highest standards. The luxury condominium project represented the pinnacle of Michael's career, a $200 million development that would house Miami's elite in 400 exclusive units. Recent weather delays had created immense pressure from developers who faced penalty clauses and angry investors if the project missed its completion deadline. Michael had been working 12-hour shifts for 3 weeks straight, trying to coordinate multiple crews while maintaining the safety standards that had kept his workers injury-free for over 5 years. Recent inspections had raised concerns about the concrete curing process, with some sections showing signs of premature stress under the accelerated construction schedule. Michael had documented his concerns in detailed reports to project managers, but work continued under increasingly tight deadlines as financial pressures mounted. The morning of August 7th began with Michael's usual safety briefing, emphasizing the importance of proper procedures despite mounting pressure to accelerate work. The 15th floor concrete pour had been completed the previous day, and workers were preparing to begin steel placement for the next level. Michael noticed unusual stress patterns in the concrete below, hairline cracks that shouldn't have appeared so early in the curing process. As Michael inspected the questionable concrete section more closely, his experienced eye detected signs of imminent structural failure. The cracks were spreading rapidly, indicating that the concrete hadn't achieved sufficient strength to support the loads being placed on it. He immediately grabbed his radio and began coordinating an emergency evacuation of all workers from the affected floors. Michael's voice echoed across the construction site as he directed workers toward the stairwells and construction elevators, his 20 years of experience allowing him to quickly assess the scope of the danger. He remained on the 15th floor to ensure that every worker had been accounted for, personally checking each work area to confirm complete evacuation. Before the evacuation could be completed, a section of the floor collapsed with a thunderous roar that could be heard for blocks. Michael and 2 other workers fell through the failing concrete, their bodies disappearing into a cascade of debris that triggered a domino effect through multiple floors below. Rescue workers labored for 6 hours to extract victims from the twisted metal and concrete debris, but Michael's injuries from the 150-foot fall proved fatal. He was pronounced dead at Jackson Memorial Hospital at 4:23 p.m., having saved the lives of 12 workers through his quick thinking and selfless actions. The construction site was permanently closed, and the partially built structure demolished. Michael's heroic actions were recognized by the city, and a scholarship was established for construction safety education in his memory. It was November 23, 2016, and the pre-dawn darkness enveloped the sprawling petrochemical processing facility in Houston, Texas. The complex of towers, pipes, and storage tanks stretched across 500 acres, their lights twinkling like industrial constellation against the Gulf Coast sky. The smell of petroleum products and chemical compounds hung heavy in the humid air, as the night shift monitored the continuous processes that never stopped, even on Thanksgiving morning. Dr. Jennifer Park adjusted her hard hat as she completed her rounds through the facility's control room, her clipboard filled with detailed notes about pressure readings and temperature variations. At 38, the brilliant chemical engineer had dedicated her career to ensuring the safe operation of processes that could turn deadly in seconds, if not properly managed. Her PhD in chemical engineering from MIT had prepared her for the technical challenges, but her natural instinct for safety had made her invaluable to the facility's operations. The petrochemical plant processed thousands of barrels of crude oil daily, transforming raw materials into the plastics, solvents, and chemicals that formed the backbone of modern industry. Jennifer's role involved overseeing safety protocols for equipment that operated under extreme pressures and temperatures, with some reactors containing compounds volatile enough to level city blocks if released improperly. Recent months had brought increasing concern as Jennifer identified potential safety hazards in the facility's aging equipment. Her detailed reports recommended immediate upgrades to pressure relief systems and emergency shutdown mechanisms. But management had consistently delayed the costly improvements due to budget constraints and quarterly profit pressures. Jennifer had been working overtime to develop temporary safety measures while waiting for equipment replacements that seemed perpetually postponed. The facility's reactor Unit 7 had been showing irregular pressure fluctuations for weeks, a pattern that Jennifer's experience told her indicated potential seal failures in the high-pressure containment system. She had recommended taking the unit offline for comprehensive inspection, but production managers argued that the temporary shutdown would cost millions in lost revenue during the peak demand season. As Jennifer began her Thanksgiving morning inspection, the readings from Reactor Unit 7 showed pressure spikes that exceeded normal operating parameters. Her training and instincts immediately recognized the signs of impending catastrophic failure, and she initiated emergency shutdown procedures while simultaneously ordering evacuation of all personnel from the affected area. The emergency shutdown process required manual operation of several critical valves that could only be accessed from within the reactor building. Jennifer's colleagues urged her to evacuate with them, but she knew that someone had to remain to ensure all safety systems were properly activated. Her detailed knowledge of the facility's systems made her the only person capable of executing the complex shutdown sequence quickly enough to prevent a larger disaster. As Jennifer worked frantically to isolate the failing reactor, the containment system suffered catastrophic failure, releasing thousands of pounds of volatile chemicals in an explosive fireball that could be seen for miles. The blast wave shattered windows in buildings throughout the industrial district and triggered evacuations across southeast Houston. Jennifer was found at her post, having remained to ensure all safety systems were activated before attempting to escape. She was pronounced dead at the scene, her sacrifice having prevented a disaster that could have killed hundreds and contaminated thousands of acres. Federal investigators found that deferred maintenance and ignored safety recommendations directly contributed to the disaster. A research center for industrial safety was established in Jennifer's honor, focusing on preventing similar tragedies. It was January 15, 2017, and the harsh Chicago winter had transformed Metropolitan General Hospital into a fortress against the brutal cold that gripped the city. Inside the emergency department, fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the linoleum floors, as medical staff battled an overwhelming surge of patients suffering from a severe flu outbreak that had pushed the facility beyond its limits. The smell of disinfectant mixed with the tension that permeated every corner of the understaffed department. Patricia Williams checked her watch as she hurried between patient rooms, her scrubs wrinkled from the 16 consecutive hours she had been on duty. At 29, the dedicated emergency room nurse had built a reputation for her exceptional clinical skills and unwavering compassion, even during the most chaotic shifts. Her colleagues relied on her steady presence and encyclopedic knowledge of emergency protocols, qualities that made her indispensable during the current crisis. The flu outbreak had overwhelmed Chicago's healthcare system, with emergency departments across the city reporting patient volumes 300% above normal capacity. Metropolitan General's administration had refused to hire temporary nursing staff despite the crisis, instead mandating overtime for existing employees who were already exhausted from weeks of double shifts. Patricia had been working without adequate rest for days, surviving on coffee and determination. Patricia's supervisor had repeatedly asked her to extend her shift as colleagues called in sick or simply couldn't continue working. Her natural instinct to help others made it impossible for her to leave when patients were suffering, even though she recognized the dangerous level of exhaustion that was affecting her judgment and physical coordination. She had expressed concerns about patient safety due to inadequate staffing levels, but management dismissed her warnings. The emergency department on January 15th resembled a war zone more than a medical facility, with patients on gurneys lining the hallways and family members crowding every available space. Patricia moved between critical cases with practiced efficiency, her years of experience allowing her to prioritize care even as new patients arrived faster than they could be treated. As Patricia responded to a cardiac arrest call in room 12, she felt a sudden tightness in her chest that she initially attributed to the stress and physical demands of her extended shift. The sensation intensified as she hurried down the corridor, her vision beginning to blur as her heart struggled to maintain its rhythm under the extreme stress of prolonged exhaustion. Patricia collapsed suddenly in the hospital corridor, her body hitting the linoleum floor with a sound that echoed through the emergency department. Colleagues who had been working alongside her for hours initially thought she had simply tripped, but quickly realized she was experiencing a severe medical emergency, as her breathing became labored and irregular. Despite being surrounded by some of Chicago's most skilled emergency medical professionals, Patricia went into cardiac arrest and could not be revived. The irony of losing a dedicated healthcare worker in the very department where she had saved countless lives was not lost on her colleagues. Patricia Williams was pronounced dead at 3:47 a.m. from a massive heart attack brought on by extreme exhaustion and stress. The hospital faced intense scrutiny over working conditions and mandatory overtime policies. Patricia's death sparked nationwide conversations about nurse burnout and patient safety. It was June 4, 2013, and the Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the massive distribution warehouse in Phoenix, transforming the 800,000-square-foot facility into a furnace that trapped heat like an oven. Inside, the temperature had climbed to 105 degrees as workers moved through towering storage areas that reached 40 feet high, their movements creating the only breeze in the stifling environment. The smell of cardboard and plastic mixed with the oppressive heat that made every breath feel like inhaling fire. Robert Kim wiped sweat from his forehead as he maneuvered his forklift through the narrow aisles between storage racks, his uniform soaked through despite the early morning hour. At 26, the hard-working warehouse employee had become skilled at operating the heavy machinery required to manage inventory in the facility's towering storage system. His steady income from the distribution center supported his young family, including his wife Sarah and their 3-year-old daughter Emma, who depended on his dedication to provide for their future. The warehouse had been experiencing record-breaking heat waves throughout the summer, with outdoor temperatures exceeding 115 degrees and indoor conditions becoming increasingly dangerous for workers. Management had been cutting operational costs by reducing air conditioning usage and limiting break times during peak shipping season, arguing that the facility's size made climate control prohibitively expensive. Robert had complained about the dangerous working conditions to his supervisors, expressing concern that the extreme heat was affecting workers' ability to operate heavy machinery safely. His requests for additional breaks and improved ventilation had been dismissed as complaints from workers trying to avoid their responsibilities. The fear of losing his job in a competitive market kept Robert from pushing too hard for changes, even as he recognized the growing danger. The morning shift on June 4th began with temperatures already approaching dangerous levels as Robert and his colleagues prepared for another day of moving inventory through the sweltering warehouse. Supervisors had been pressuring workers to maintain productivity despite the extreme conditions, threatening disciplinary action for anyone who couldn't keep up with the demanding pace. As Robert operated his forklift at a height of 25 feet, retrieving inventory from the upper storage racks, he began showing obvious signs of heat exhaustion. His movements became sluggish and uncoordinated, and colleagues noticed him struggling to maintain his balance on the elevated platform. The combination of extreme heat and physical exertion had pushed his body beyond its limits. Robert's condition deteriorated rapidly as heat strokes set in, causing confusion and loss of motor control that made operating the heavy machinery extremely dangerous. Despite his obvious distress, supervisors continued to pressure him to complete his assigned tasks, unwilling to lose productivity during the busy shipping period. Robert collapsed while operating the forklift at full height, his unconscious body causing the vehicle to tip over as it lost control. The forklift crashed to the warehouse floor with tremendous force, crushing Robert beneath the 9,000-pound machine as his horrified co-workers rushed to help. The combination of heat stroke and crushing injuries proved immediately fatal. Robert Kim was pronounced dead at the scene, his body temperature having reached 108 degrees. OSHA investigators found the warehouse had violated numerous heat safety regulations and worker protection standards. The incident exposed widespread abuse of warehouse workers in extreme temperature conditions across the industry. New federal regulations were implemented requiring climate control and mandatory rest periods in extreme heat, with Robert's case becoming a rallying point for labor unions advocating for stronger worker protections. It was September 28, 2018, and the Seattle skyline glowed with warm evening light as Amanda Foster worked alone on the 12th floor of the towering corporate office building. The 20-story structure housed dozens of businesses, its glass facade reflecting the city's bustling energy, even as most employees had long since headed home. Amanda adjusted her reading glasses as she reviewed client presentation materials spread across her desk, her meticulous attention to detail evident in every carefully organized document. At 33, the dedicated office manager had earned a reputation for her thorough knowledge of building operations and emergency procedures, making her the go-to person for safety concerns throughout the corporate complex. The office building had been experiencing recurring problems with its fire suppression system for months, with malfunctioning sprinklers and faulty alarm sensors, creating a patchwork of safety hazards throughout the structure. Amanda had filed multiple detailed reports documenting blocked emergency exits, non-functioning fire doors, and inadequate evacuation lighting, but building management had consistently postponed necessary repairs due to budget constraints. Amanda's role as office manager included coordinating safety procedures for the entire building, a responsibility she took seriously after completing advanced fire safety training the previous year. Her systematic approach to emergency preparedness had identified numerous violations of fire codes, but her warnings had been dismissed by building management as overly cautious concerns. The evening of September 28th found Amanda working late to prepare for an important client presentation scheduled for the following morning. The building's aging electrical system had been showing signs of strain, with flickering lights and occasional power fluctuations. As Amanda reviewed her presentation materials, she noticed an unusual burning smell that seemed to be coming from the building's ventilation system. Her fire safety training immediately triggered concern as she recognized the distinctive odor of electrical components overheating. She quickly saved her work and began investigating the source, following proper protocols by checking nearby electrical panels. The smell intensified as Amanda moved through the 12th floor, leading her to discover smoke beginning to seep through the walls near the main electrical distribution panel. Her training kicked in immediately as she activated the building's fire alarm system and called 911, providing detailed information about the location and nature of the emergency while beginning to evacuate the building. Amanda's knowledge of the building's layout allowed her to quickly identify other late workers who needed to be notified of the emergency. She moved systematically through the floors above and below her location, ensuring that security guards and cleaning staff were aware of the danger and evacuating toward the stairwells. The fire spread rapidly through the building's electrical system, with smoke quickly filling the stairwells due to malfunctioning fire doors that failed to contain the blaze as designed. Amanda found herself trapped in a stairwell filled with thick, toxic smoke as she attempted to guide the last group of workers to safety. Firefighters arrived to find Amanda collapsed just 2 floors from the exit, apparently overcome by smoke inhalation while helping others escape. Despite immediate medical attention, she was pronounced dead at Harborview Medical Center at 9:34 p.m. from smoke inhalation and carbon monoxide poisoning. The fire exposed decades of deferred maintenance and ignored safety violations. Amanda's detailed safety reports became crucial evidence in criminal negligence charges against building management. Thanks for watching. Just when you think you've heard the most heartbreaking workplace tragedies, we're just getting started. Click the next video for the next stories that will show unsolved mysteries that haunt families forever.